If you see this man, how would you respond? Just shout out. First thing that comes to your mind. Adults in the back, everyone, shout out. First thing that comes to mind. How would you respond if you see this man? Okay? How about this man? I would be afraid that I got another speeding ticket. But this man. Alright, how about if you saw this man? What? He looks like a very slimy person. I don't know. Alright, last one. How about this man? Actually, that one's a little bit harder to answer, I think, maybe for some people. And that's what we're going to think about tonight, is how do you respond to Jesus? What is your response to Jesus? How do people respond to who he is? But first, before we get into that, we're going to do a quick review of where we've been on this series. Because y'all, this is the 8th part of this series on the man. It's pretty awesome. So we started this back in the beginning of January. Rocky got us kicked off with the end in mind. So I'm going to be looking at this little Matthew chart. If you got one of our little series guides, you got this in your Bible. So right here, Rocky got started. He kicked us off with the end in mind, talking about how we want to be disciples that make disciples. The next week, Houston took it, and he told us what the discipleship process was like, what that was all about in Jesus' time, what it looked like to be a disciple, laid out this just crazy high call for us. Then after that, we really slowed down on the pace, because we hit the Sermon on the Mount, and we stayed there for 4 weeks. We camped out. We talked about knowing Jesus, what that's like. We went and talked about mercy. We talked about what his mercy was like. Then we went and we talked about being pure in heart. And then finally we talked about worry, what Jesus says about worry. Last week, 7th part, Brad brought it. And he was talking to us about looking at things through how Jesus looked at everyone through kingdom eyes, through these eyes of compassion. And that was this part. And if you see on this little guide, it has Matthew broken up into 5 sections. And so that was this part, talking about Jesus bringing the kingdom into people's lives. That's what Brad talked about. This week, we're going right here. We're right in the middle of the book. And this section is all about responses to Jesus. It's all about how people responded to the man. And there's a variety of those responses that we see laid out. We see some people that they responded really positively. That was like the crowds. Kind of like the people with no names. We hear all these people start following Jesus. By the way, this is Matthew chapters 11, 12, 13. That's what we're on tonight. 11, 12, 13. And everyone, the crowd, maybe like these people, we don't know their names. They're following, they're responding. They're going crazy about Jesus. They love him. And then we see this other group that's kind of neutral and sort of an unlikely group. We see this guy, John the Baptist. We have a story about him. We have a story about Jesus' family that they're kind of doubting. They're not really sure who Jesus is. Are you really the one? They're kind of asking about. They're a little unsure. The response is a little uncertain. And then we're going to kind of look a little bit more tonight about the third response that we see. And this is from the religious leaders. And this response is negative. They are certain that Jesus is not who he says he is. And they respond very negatively towards him, to the point of wanting to kill him. And it's pretty cool how Matthew divides up, how Matthew really structures this book. It's insanely awesome. But after these stories, he collects these 7 parables that Jesus taught. Maybe they were all in one setting. Maybe it was just over the period of Jesus' lifetime. Matthew collected them all together. We don't really know. But there's these 7 parables that Jesus taught. And we're going to look at one of those tonight. And each of those parables illustrate in different ways how people respond to Jesus. So that's what we're going to look at tonight in just a few minutes. But I have a question for you first, and it's this. Why do people respond negatively to Jesus? I mean, everything we've seen about Jesus, he's this man of love, right? He's like the most loving guy. He's looking with compassion at everyone. He has these kingdom eyes. He's a man of mercy. He doesn't worry. Why did someone ever respond negatively to Jesus? And I'll tell you why. It's because Jesus came to fight. And sometimes we have this image of Jesus where he's just this, little weak, pale-skinned white guy sitting on a bench with a kid on his knee. But Jesus came with a serious mission, and he was coming to confront evil. Jesus came to confront evil in his good world. Jesus came to confront evil in his good world. He's a warrior. He is a man on a mission. And guess what? That's going to anger some people because, we're fallen people. We all do some evil in our lives, and he was threatening people's power. Jesus came to confront that evil. So we trace this back, page 1 of the Bible. God creates the world, and he says that it is good. Yes. God created the world. He said that it is good. And then tension gets in this story because we see this mysterious snake shows up, and he's kind of like tempting people to take good and evil into their own hands. Like God has set out, this is the standard of good and evil, and he's tempting people to take good and evil into their own hands, and the people succumb. They go along with it. They define what good and evil is in their own eyes. And ever since then, people have been doing that. People have been siding with the snake. They've been siding with just deciding, I can decide what's right, I can decide what's wrong, I'm just gonna do my own thing. And they've been deciding good and evil in their own eyes, siding with the snake. And with that, all kinds of evil has been unleashed into God's good world. I mean, things like sex trafficking, racism, murder, lust, lying, vengeance. These things are perpetuated every day, but they were never a part of God's plan. They weren't a part of God's plan for his good world that he set up, but people chose to define good and evil in their own eyes. But Yahweh had a plan. Because he wasn't just going to leave it like that. He wasn't just going to leave us. He could have said, that was a cool little project, but maybe like your 3rd grade ant farm, I'm just going to leave it, just let them all die off. Jesus didn't do that. He said, no. Instead, I'm going to become a human. I'm going to come down to earth in a guy named Jesus, and I'm going to confront the evil. I'm going to come and I'm going to fight it. I want to get that out. I want to get this evil out of my good world. So Jesus comes in. He shows up, and some people respond very negatively to him. Some people hate him. And we see this conflict between religious leaders, between people who they're holding this power in their own eyes. And we see some people that hate Jesus. But here's the crazy thing is that Jesus doesn't see them as his enemy. It's interesting that as you read through the gospel, Jesus never sees the religious leaders as his enemy. He doesn't see Rome, the people who would later kill him, he doesn't see Rome as his enemy. No. Jesus sees something much deeper than that. He sees a deeper, more menacing, darker evil that's behind all of this. The snake from Genesis 2. Satan. Evil. Genesis 3. He sees this greater source of evil. The devil. Satan, as we call him. And he sees something much worse that he has come to confront. Now, and it's interesting too, that all the evil, it's not all the evil, it's not a, the devil made me do it situation. It's not the devil's causing all the evil in the world. That's not it. We do plenty of that ourselves. But at the same time, there's a way that we experience evil and sin as something foreign to us. You know what I'm talking about? Like, you sin, and you have this moment where you know what the right thing is to do, and you know what the wrong thing is to do, and you want to do the wrong thing, and you have this little mental battle in my mind. Well, do I do this? Do I follow God's way? Do I follow my way? Well, my way would be really fun, and you decide, hey, I'm going to go do this. And you do this thing, and then later you look back, and you have this sense of regret, and you look back, and you think, like, that wasn't me. That wasn't the truest sense of me. Like, I don't want to do that. Like Paul says, I do the things that I don't want to do. Like, you look back and it's like this wasn't really even me. And there's a sense in that we experience evil like it's foreign to us because it is. It's not a part of God's good world. He created it and he said it was good. And then it was a later destruction that God added to it. And it's not to say that we're innocent in all that at all, but it's to say that it's not a part of God's plan. And he sent Jesus to come and fix it, to confront and defeat that evil. But the question is, how? How did he do that? So, on the cross, Jesus defeated the power of sin in a Christian's life. When we choose to believe in him, we're not a slave to that. We're free from that. That's a different message than what I'm talking about tonight. But that is the most crucial part in the gospel, that Jesus, he set us free from that sin. But we can look around in the world and we see that there's still a lot of evil, right? I mean, it doesn't take a long look to see that it's not fully restored yet. Jesus is going to fix that. So how is he going to finally eliminate that evil? How is the man going to restore his world back to the good state that God had it originally on day one when he said it was good? That's what we're going to look at here. So, if you brought your Bibles, turn to Matthew 13. Matthew chapter 13. Boom. 13, 24 through 30. We're going to look at a parable called the parable of the weeds and the wheat. This is probably my favorite one in chapter 13. This is awesome. Read this whole chapter, please. A lot of great stuff in here. But this parable is awesome. Jesus tells this parable to illustrate people's responses to him and to illustrate his response to evil. So we're going to look at that. So here we go. And I'll have it on the screen if you did not bring a paper Bible tonight. So, boom, here we go. All right. Parable of the weeds and the wheat, verse 24. Here is another story Jesus told. The kingdom of heaven is like a farmer who planted seed in his field. But at night, as the workers slept, his enemy came and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. And when the crops began to grow and produce grain, the weeds grew also. The farmer's workers went to him and said, "Sir, the fields where you planted that good seed are full of weeds. Where did they come from?" "An enemy has done this," the farmer said. "Should we pull out the weeds?" they asked. "No," he replied. "You'll uproot the wheat if you do. Let both grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort the weeds, tie them into bundles, and burn them, and put the wheat in the barn." Is that clear? Answer all your questions? No. Okay, well, it's a good thing that it actually didn't for the disciples either, because they later asked Jesus about it a couple verses down. So skip down to Matthew 13, 36. Here we go. All right, so 36. Then, leaving the crowds outside, Jesus went into a house. And his disciples said, "Please explain to us the story of the weeds in the field." And Jesus replied, "The Son of Man," by the way, Son of Man is Jesus. "The Son of Man is the farmer who plants the good seed. The field is the world. And the good seed represents the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people who belong to the evil one. The enemy who planted the weeds among the wheat is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the harvesters are the angels." It's getting crazy. "Just as the weeds will be sorted out and burned in the fire, so it will be in the end of the world. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will remove from his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. And the angels will throw them into the fiery furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." You've seen this phrase a lot of times. If you've been reading Matthew, it's mentioned like 6 times. It's crazy. "And the righteous will shine like the sun in their Father's kingdom." Anyone with ears to hear should listen and understand. Okay, let's break this one down a little bit. It's kind of crazy. Okay, so here we go. So we've got Jesus. Jesus is the farmer in this parable. What's the farmer doing? He's planting wheat. What is this wheat? The wheat are the people of the kingdom, the people who are doing his will, the people who are following Jesus. And then we have this other figure pops in and is planting weeds. Who's planting the weeds?
Devil.
Jesus says, the devil, yes. Says the devil is planting the weeds among his good field, his good creation. The devil is planting weeds. Okay, so then what happens? Now, his followers, they come up to him, the farmers, the farm hands, and they're like, Jesus, well, should we go and pull up these weeds? We're trying to follow you. We're trying to do the right thing, so we should probably pull those weeds up, right? And what does he say? No, do not pull the weeds. Because if you do, you're going to mess up big time. You're going to end up pulling wheat at the same time. And guess what? Think about this. It doesn't take you long to think of a Christian who's kind of taken this into their own mind. They've thought, well, I'm supposed to be the judge. I'm supposed to decide who's following Jesus, who hasn't. And every time, it ends disastrously. Jesus does not trust his disciples with that. And we're not the judge. If we do, we're going to pull wheat. So what happens in the end of this parable? And this is where it gets a little touchy. I kind of struggle with this. In the end of this parable, are all of the weeds turned into wheat? Are the weeds just conformed into wheat? Yes or no? No. No. The wheat's put in the barn. The weeds are taken and burned. Hell. A lot of things come to your mind when you hear hell. Maybe it's a cuss word around your house. Maybe you think, imagine a lot of us think of this fiery place of suffering where demons are stabbing you with pitchforks. I think that's kind of the idea that people think of hell. But I want you to know that is not the way the Bible talks about hell. Take that out of your mind. So, Jesus loves his good world. And he is going to get rid of the evil. He's going to remove the evil from his good world. It's going to happen in finale. He's going to get rid of that. Hell is that place. Now, we're talking about hell. Okay, the Bible uses a couple images to talk about it. It talks about hell as a fiery furnace. That's what we read in this passage. And then it also talks about hell as a place of utter darkness. Now, answer this. Can darkness and fire exist in the same place?
Yes.
No. Fire creates light, right? Like a flame creates light. Darkness and fire cannot be in the same place. So how could this place be dark and fiery at the same time? That's not possible. These are metaphors. These are metaphors. They mean something deeper. And we could talk about that at another time of what those images mean that Jesus is using, but we don't know. What is hell literally like? What does it actually look like? What's it actually going to be? We don't know. All we know the Bible talks about is it's going to be a place of separation from God, where the evil is going to be separated off into one place, and God is going to restore his good world back to its original intent, back to how he created it. Now, with that, the one thing we do know about hell is we know that God is love. So we know that whenever your idea of hell is, it has to fit into this picture of God being love. It's got to fit into that. And so, with hell, think about it this way. A person who spent their whole life trying to get away from Jesus. Their whole life, they have said, I want nothing to do with you, Jesus. I don't want a relationship with God. I don't want a part of that. How would it be loving of a good God to take that person and to put them in a place where they're surrounded by God's glory and they're in his presence? I have no respect of their free will, of their choices. They've chosen their whole life. They want nothing to do with them. So they're separated. What is that like? Don't know. The Bible doesn't say it. So we don't even worry about that. What we know is what we're supposed to do. It's not to pull the wheat. He will judge it one day, and it's not us. Jesus must separate the evil to restore his good world. Eventually, he's going to separate the weeds from the wheat. That's not us. He's going to separate those who've given their lives from him from those who have rejected him. That is him. That's not us. But Jesus wants to redeem his good world by confronting the evil and removing it. Jesus wants to redeem his good world by confronting the evil and removing it. So where does this leave us? What is our role in all of this? Jesus is pretty clear that our role is definitely not to pull up weeds. That's certainly not it. We're not the judge. He's very clear on that. So what is Jesus doing in this story? He's planting wheat. He's spreading the good news of the kingdom. And we're supposed to be like Jesus, right? So I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. I think that's the picture that we're supposed to get out of this. We are to plant wheat. As his followers, we are to spread God's goodness and love into his world. That's how we confront the enemy. That is how we partner with Jesus in restoring his world. Confront the evil in God's good world by spreading his goodness and love. Confront the evil in God's good world by spreading his goodness and love. That's our job. Not to pull the wheat, not to judge. Confront the evil by spreading his goodness and love. That's how we partner with the man who's trying to restore his world, to bring it back to its original spot of where it was good. And we do that one person at a time. There's one person in your life that needs to know about his goodness and love, and you can reach out to that person. And that's how we can partner with the man, and you can partner with him to spread his goodness and love, to restore his broken world, to bring it back to good.